I've learned that leadership is just a practice, just like anything else. Always learning, always making mistakes, always reflecting on that stuff, always looking for new areas of improvement. I'll probably never have it figured out, and that's totally cool because now it's just a practice.
Leadership is a discipline. It's a series of actions that you have to be consistent with delivering, and you're not supposed to know all those things. There's not anyone who just wakes up a leader. Maybe you have leadership traits, but how you execute on that is where the sauce is.
Land insights, market trends, industry experts. Welcome to the Land Department Podcast, the state of land and energy as we see it.
Brent, we've been wanting to have this one for a while. I think we've been with Brad Gibbs a couple times.
Yeah, Brad was a two-time returning guest, and my boy Zach was feeling left out. So I told him I was just saving him for the best one. No,
yeah.
Super happy to have Zach on. Zach and I've been buddies for a number of years. Met randomly in a hotel in Midland. I don't know how many, almost 10 years ago probably. And been friends ever since and worked a lot together. Our companies work together a lot, and just kind of been talking a lot about ideas of what we can do. We share a lot of business and kind of leadership and team building and structure of our companies. You always have to have a mentor or someone that you work with that you can share ideas with. And he's been a good friend of mine, a good mentor. I've learned a tremendous amount from Zach. And so I had this kind of idea of doing a podcast on leadership books and team building books and stuff like that. Zach's a book mentor of mine. He's the guy who keeps me reading. I'll get a random package in the mail from Zach every so often with a book that he read. And so I really look up to him and, the guidance that he gives on that front. So I asked him to come on, and he was gracious enough to say, yeah. So thanks for coming on, Zach.
The Doubletree in Midland, probably.
Yep. And that old cruddy bar.
They're building like a whole new complex there now.
Yeah, it's like they have a fancy bar. It doesn't look like Roadhouse on the inside.
Yeah, it's going to be incredible.
Yeah, it's a lot's changed in Midland since then, but yeah, I think that was the first time, and we were all tired of shaking hands and networking, so we just sat there and just became fast friends. And I bet we talked for 2 hours. So
I think
yeah,
it's been really incredible for me to see how much you and your team have grown Dudley over the years. I mean, especially the last few years, it's been super inspiring for me to see you guys go into different industries and do new things and do things differently. And I know that whenever we work with a client that we might share also works with Dudley, I know they're going to be great people. So that's always nice to work with them.
Yeah, I think it was when we first met, we were both kind of on similar paths. I think I was kind of got my first leadership position at the company. Zach was growing the firm, but he was still like in it, well, we met in Midland. so we were in it, just grinding. And I think, God, that was around 2016. The boom was happening out in Midland. And so our paths and a lot of the things that our firms have done, our companies have done, have been similar in that sense, kind of going through the last 10 years together.
Yeah, I think thinking back 10 years ago, I was still trying to figure everything out.
Yeah. Hell, I'm trying to figure it out
today.
today.
I still am to a large degree.
Yeah.
I have better like mentors and advisors and folks on the team that uncover blind spots and stuff. And back then I really didn't. And so maybe that's the difference, is that the people that are supporting us and are helping us along are super high quality, because owning a business is a little bit different, and so it's good to surround yourself sometimes with people who are in that situation or have those aspirations, because they have different challenges.
And I think if you can't get above it to a certain extent, you can't see things coming. And so when you're in it working it, things come and you're just reacting to like, what's the thing of the day? Right.
Yeah. Getting above it is a fantastic, like getting that altitude. And sometimes I need to get altitude when there's a big problem, and like you just said, Brent, like reacting to it versus how can I step back, look at this thing from the top, from 10,000 feet up, and maybe talk to someone else who has had a similar issue. Cause it's kind of like that. I think of that. You ever see that cartoon of the people touching the elephant? Like a bunch of blind people are touching an elephant and they all think that they're touching the whole elephant, right? Because that's all that they can feel. And so I
Yeah.
think of it like touching an elephant. Like I'm looking at it from this perspective, and someone like you may have solved the same issue or had a similar issue from a different perspective. Or maybe you have the benefit of hindsight, having already made a similar decision or been through like a leadership issue, and you have the benefit of hindsight. Like, well, I thought it was going to go this way, and actually it went this other way. Here's what I learned. I think
Yeah.
that's really valuable.
Yeah. And I
How
think
did you get to that altitude? What's the first step for you, and what was that to get to that altitude?
For me, I think the first step to getting to the altitude was realizing that that was even like an option, right? And slowing down the reaction time and knowing when the answer is like, maybe someone brings me an issue and the answer is, hey, we need to circle back on this, or we need to get other people's buy-in on this, or we need to get other people to weigh in, or this actually is part of a bigger issue that we need to talk to other folks on the team about, and not just like making decisions on the fly all the time because maybe there's some fake urgency there.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we need to get this done like right now. Like, do we? Or is this like this sometimes it's even like a next year thing,
Yeah.
right? Where we really don't even make a decision on this for 6 months or 8 months or 9 months or whatever. I understand that, because of the way it was presented, there may seem like there's some urgency behind it, but is it real urgency? Is there a real concrete deadline on this? And I find with people issues and leadership issues and sometimes strategic issues, it's better to just take a step back for a little bit and try and get that altitude. And sometimes I'll call Brent or I'll call, someone else on the team to get their perspective and just, hey, here's this issue. What are your thoughts? And that's how I get altitude in those decisions. How about you, Brent?
you mentioned talking to your team, and I think that's kind of the first step, right? It's there's a difference between having a bunch of people doing work and having a united team acting as a united front, and then and all the trust that goes into being able to open yourself up, be vulnerable to asking questions as a leader to your team, and them knowing that they can give you an honest response. And I think that's kind of some of the stuff that takes time. Yeah, you can react and solve a problem today. I think a lot of people, we're men, right? We want to solve problems. It's our natural instinct to just fix things. But to really grow a team that can manage itself and grow and thrive, you first have to grow trust and expectations and accountabilities, and you have to define what you are going to be as an organization, right? And that doesn't just come out of a memo. That comes out of action. That comes out of communicating with your team, top to bottom. That comes from your hiring process, your interviewing process. It comes from how you present yourself in public. Like people need to know what you're about before they can act how they need to and then thrive. So for us, that was the biggest thing.
I really love this conversation. I really want to frame it really quickly. So, both of you are growing and leading wonderful teams. Zach, you were saying about 100 headcount for you,
Yeah.
and Brent, what are you at?
As many as you need.
I revise my answer. I think
There
whatever
we go.
makes people think that there's capacity. That's what we're.
Yeah.
That's where we're at. One of the
Okay.
things that you said, Brent, you're totally right. And for me, that's been probably where my biggest learning opportunities have been over the last few years. I think that I really like working solo, and I like kind of working in solitude sometimes and just kind of getting stuff done and being in my own little world. And I think that served me for a little bit. And when it comes to working with a team, like I had to learn and relearn, and I'm still relearning probably in some areas, how to work as not only as a team leader, just as part of a team. Right. And so that's something that is definitely not taught as working as a leader or as a team member in the professional context. Like, what does that even mean? And so for me, it's been an area of a lot of learning, and I made a lot of mistakes, um, in that area. And so I'm always looking for improvements there.
What are some of those mistakes that you've run into?
Under communicating, probably not sharing my point of view fast enough.
Yeah. What about for you, Brent? What was difficult for you as a leader?
I think appropriate conflict, if that's even a word. I would, early in my career, I was hard driving, right? This is how we're going to do it. This is how it has to be. This is the right way to do it. And I think a lot of that was good, right? It's like half of the job is giving a damn, you know,
Mhm.
and so I was real, and that came across wrong. It was how I communicated it. And then other times, as you over the years you work with people, you establish a good close bond with them, and you really work to delegate or give responsibility and let people do their jobs, but you avoid conflict, because I'd see something, but I didn't know how to articulate that. Hey, I didn't have the means to have that conversation other than just lashing out and saying, "What the hell are you doing?" That kind of thing. Those
Bingo.
were mistakes I made, and so people would avoid communication with me. You know, I would avoid that because I didn't have a structure to do it. Like I didn't have a foundation within the company that, hey, this is our culture. This is how we work through things. And that took time. And only I feel like in the last, 5, 6, 7 years, I've gotten so much better at that. But early on, I made a lot of mistakes and rubbed people the wrong way. And, only once I started working with other people within our company as an owner of the company, I would be able to build rapport with them and find out that, man, they would avoid me, because they call me Bruiser Broussard, right? Because I was so intense. And
Yeah, that's definitely a negative. A negative is like you want feedback, and also if you can't, like it can be. And I totally see where people are coming from. Sometimes you get feedback, and it's not like the truth, and sometimes you're like, wow, it's not really like this isn't as bad as I feel like the truth is a little bit worse, and you really want the truth on stuff. And if you've demonstrated in the past that you don't like when people bring you bad feedback, or you attack or negative towards that person for bringing the feedback, of course people are going to bring it to you,
yeah,
right? And so it sounds so obvious to me now. One of the things that I read recently was about this concept called the microscopic truth. And so, like, to tell the microscopic truth as often as you can, which is sharing your point of view as often as you can. And if you tell and it's the microscopic truth, if there's no arguing about it. Once you give feedback or whatever, if there's argument about it, then it might not be the truth. It might be emotions, or it might be biased or whatever. And so I thought that was an interesting way to think about, feedback is just how can I give feedback in a way that the other person like takes that feedback and there's no argument about like what the truth is there,
yeah.
you know?
I think there's a lot of things that kind of go into that, and to being able to have that conversation, right,
Right.
with someone whenever you're trying to develop someone on your team, because teams aren't, they don't appear, they're made, right?
Right.
And and one of the things that helped us, and it's super cheesy, everybody talks about core values and culture and all that, and those are easy words to throw out, but
Mhm.
putting the work into establishing what you are, like what is
Mhm.
your company, what is this team about? What's the foundation for us? And when you can establish that with your team, then you have the rules of the game. Then all your conversations are about, hey, how does this align with who we are? How does maybe, something that I'm trying to have a conversation with a person on my team about helping them improve, it all is framed around coaching, not conflict, or hey, you need to do
Mhm.
this better. It's
Mhm.
I'm coaching you to be what this company is about, And if you're not about that, that's fine. This maybe isn't the best place for you, and I wish you the best. Right. But if you value what being a part
Yeah,
of
you
this
can go
team,
be an A player somewhere else.
absolutely,
Yeah.
but in every organization and every industry, has different things that drive who they are as a company. Zach and I are in the service business. That's why we have so much to share, together. We have that in common beyond business, beyond everything. We're a service organization. So like part of our team and our culture is about service. And so when you're coaching someone, it's in the spirit of that. Hey, we're a service organization. We have to do these things to continue to be in business. It's essential to what we do. And
And Brent, I'm curious, how often do you have those conversations with people?
probably not as much as I should. Uh, Again, it's kind of my natural avoidance of conflict.
Yeah.
I find that
I used to do it. One of the tools that I use in my brain is like, you go to the airport and there's that sign that says, there's like a backpack on the sign, and it's like, if you see something, say something. Like, if you see the
It's a
backpack
bomb.
just laying there. Yeah. So I think of that like with feedback. Like, if I see something, I say something. Because
yeah,
what doesn't help is, waiting until the review process,
yeah,
right? Or the evaluation process. You haven't said anything about this thing all quarter or every 6 months or however often you do your review process. And then you lay it on their desk during the evaluation. And it's like a whopper that they never even
yeah.
knew was an issue and could have maybe been easily fixed with a 2-minute conversation 7 weeks ago. And so that was an area of improvement for me, was just more consistent, kind of constant feedback.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, I think when you read, when I started my second career, my first career was being a landman and a project manager. My second career is like figuring out how to run a business and how to grow teams and evolve my business and my company and provide opportunities, right? When I started that, I'm reading all the books. Thank you for sending me the books. But you have to take those things out of these leadership and team building books and apply it, make it work for you. Like, what's your personality? And, one of the things I always heard, you have to have evaluations. You have to give feedback, and there's a structured time to that. You need to do it once a month and have all these check-ins. And that's just not natural for me. I'm from Louisiana, man. I just want to talk. And so I find that I'm a lot better about that. We have a lot more structure. And just how often we interact with our leadership teams, and that provides that opportunity. So I feel like I've gotten a lot better with that and frame it more in the sense of sharing my experience, what went wrong, what went right, what I think, what I see, what we've learned in the past, and I always try to frame it not on this is how I would do it, but like, this is what I did before and this is how it went wrong. Here, take it and work with it from there and let them find their own path.
Do you mind if I ask you a question?
Hey, man, I'm relieved.
One of the things that you brought up was knowing what works for you and what doesn't work for you, right? And so I think in order to do that, you need to have a very strong sense of like self, right? And which to me means that you have to have energy and you have to get, energized and inspired kind of outside of the workplace. And so how do you like find inspiration outside of the workplace? How do you get that energy outside of the workplace? And secondly, how important do you think that is for leaders to bring that outside stuff into the workplace?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I think balance, right? I don't think I think balance is important. You can't live work or you'll get burnout. You'll get bored, you'll get burnout. You have to have energy because your batteries are recharged. For me, my faith is a big thing. Just time to disconnect, dedicated little time during the day, kind of understanding that your purpose is something else other than this job, right? You don't have to. I've got a 16-year-old son, and I'm in this stage of life where I'm trying to explain to him, you don't have to know what you're going to do but what you have to know is how you're going to go about doing it, right? And work ethic is what's going to carry you regardless of what it is. So, you have to have that work ethic, and it's, especially in the service business, I do things people don't want to do. That's why they outsource it. That's what we do as a company. So it's not in like doing the things I want to do. It's knowing that whatever I'm going to do it, do it all the way. And then, as you are fortunate enough to stay a part of a team, it becomes less about, ambition or energy and just showing up for your teammate. It's the age old kind of military thing. Like I'm working hard for the guy next to me or the girl next to me and my team. And then once you can build that and get a culture going, and then you just feed off of that, and the more success you see in that and the more pride you take in your team, the more energy you bring to the group. And then it's the flywheel turns. So that's my big thing. I'm a big hobby guy. Everybody says, oh, I'll work forever. Hell no, not me. When I hang it up, I'm going to disappear into the wilderness, never to be seen again. Right? But while I'm here, I'm going to go hard and give it all I got. I grew up with farmers, out in the country, and just hardworking blue collar people, and that's just kind of the mentality. And I guess I took a little bit of that. I'm thankful for it. How about you? You're great in my friend pie because we're so alike and so different. I just
Right.
what kind of energizes you?
I think the last year or so, I've really been focusing a lot on making sure that my life outside of work is giving me energy. And so I really like to learn new stuff. And so for me, it's on the weekends, no work at all on the weekends. And it's jujitsu. I just started taking piano lessons. It's, I've got a 3-year-old daughter. So playing with my 3-year-old, going to the pool or going to the park or whatever, and just really having downtime. For me, having a weekend packed of events does not give me a lot of energy. It kind of feels like I'm back at the office where I have like a pretty stacked calendar. So for me, having unstructured weekends really helps me get energized a lot, and really helps me kind of get ready for. I think of weekends as like not really my reward for a week that I worked hard at. I think of it as like a precondition for me to be able to show up on Monday and perform with the team. So you look at like the best professional athletes. Like I was listening to this podcast with LeBron James a few years ago, and he slept through he has his own companies, and he slept through his own Christmas party because he was like, man, I just needed like that recovery time. And so I'm not LeBron James. I'm not even an amateur athlete, nor on any scale of LeBron James. And I think I still, when I hear something from someone who's a superstar that I think I can steal and borrow for my own life on a smaller scale, I definitely try and do it. And so we really try and preach, at the firm, the importance of getting energized and having a life outside of work. It's been difficult for people who come from cultures that are 24/7 work.
Which is that in the lawyer and the attorney space, like that's everything. Like that's a big part of that culture, right?
Some folks that have joined us from companies with those kind of cultures, like I've noticed that sometimes it takes 3 to 6 months for them not to take their laptop home on the weekends or not to take their laptop on vacation. And one of our partners this year went on his first vacation without taking work with him, without working on his laptop. First family vacation in 15 years. Wow. 15 years without work. So like, is it really a vacation if you're working? Like, how can you
Or you're just working away from work
unplug and get refreshed and stuff, And so
how did you
that's kind of the culture that Brad and I are, really focused on. Is our kind of belief is that if we're really focused on the right things, we can get those things done between Monday and Friday.
Yeah.
as long as everyone's kind of focused on the right things.
I think you hit on something earlier that's resonates with me for sure. I am a busybody. My relaxation is just doing something that's not in front of a computer. I have to do something. So I tend to just fill my plate. Would do too much. And then so as a company, when we started trying to get better about being deliberate about the things that we were going to do, as a company to try to become better or diversify or cultivate talent, like I had all these things that I knew we need to do and I stacked them all in there. Well, all that did was just deplete my team's energy, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, if you have, so similar to you, Brent, like I come up with a lot of ideas and then I tend to just drop them and I'm like, let's do it. And they're like, we have 30 million other things to do right now. It's like your idea of the day does not really like make the cut, Zach. So I totally hear you on that.
Yeah. And so I'm curious, like how you guys got past that, what has been your process from, hey, I have all these things I want to do, you've elevated and then now you see all these things, they're so clear that you need to do and you want to do. What's your process been like to weed out what's really important and apply your focus and your team's focus and get all your team behind that to really accomplish the things that are the most important to the success of the firm?
So I've definitely had to build some kind of systems around that. First is, my executive operations lead, Amy. She's amazing at helping keep me on track, which is really helpful. And she also knows when I'm bringing up stuff that maybe should be brought up or maybe is like a bigger project, like, hey, let's push this off until we do our quarterly planning or annual planning or whatever. Because sometimes to me, if something is like, sometimes I think of a project and I'm like, oh, this is like would take someone like an hour and it really takes like a lot, like a week or 2 weeks or whatever, right? Like,
and then when you add that to the work that they have to do every day,
yeah,
it takes
the work
months
that they have
and
to
it just
do
never gets
or
done.
completely contradicts something that we already have that's working. And, so she's absolutely amazing to work with. And then her and I have a process where basically when I have ideas, we kind of run those ideas through a process. And it's kind of like an idea. I would consider her like, she's kind of has created a role as like an idea project manager is kind of where we're going, because some of the ideas that I have are like quite large and would take a few years to execute, and some of them are small. And so really like having an idea, not really an idea generation process, more like an idea execution process, and putting it in the right bucket of like, hey, just because I had this idea for this new marketing thing doesn't mean that we need to start it today. Maybe when we do our annual planning, I'll bring it up. And also sometimes I'll just get people to weigh in on it. Like, hey, I think I've gotten better at bringing it to the team and just saying like, hey, I've got this idea. What are your thoughts? And usually it's like, this is a big project, or we're already actually doing something similar to this and I didn't, know about it, or this is a good idea and we don't have the capacity to do it right now. So it's as much managing myself as anything. How about you?
I think as an idea person, I think that's one of the things that you and I've had in common over the years. We just got all these things, I was very bad. You talk about mistakes that I made, as I was horrible on execution of ideas, right? Great at running projects, good land man. Me and my team can do anything when it comes to the land business. I'm very confident in that and confident in all our people's abilities. But when I'd have these ideas about elevating or something that would make us better, I knew we needed to do it. We generally knew how we were going to do it. Horrible at execution, not the proper planning. Assume that, okay, we're going to do this. I'm going to talk to this person about it. It's going to get done. That's not the way it works. And I think it took enough failure, and looking back and saying, God, I had all these things that I said we wanted to do, or I knew we needed to do, that we ultimately never did. or weren't successful at, it kind of humbled me a little bit. Say, okay, we have to look at this a different way. And it's patience.
Why weren't you executing?
Well, it's just because we didn't see it through. It was, hey, let's do this thing. Boom, we're going to do it. And we say we're going to do it, but didn't have a process for fully informing everyone. Didn't have a process established of like, how are we going to do it? And really just, it's how do you eat an elephant, right? You know, a bite at a time. And I was like, let's go eat an elephant. And I think, you know, we instilled some practices into the company with, you know, annual planning, quarterly rocks, accountabilities, leaders for those things, and it understanding and recognizing that, hey, I have all these great ideas that in my mind would take nothing to do, but for it to be successful, you have to get engagement from the top down within your company. It's not just the leadership team. It's like this affects everybody, so everybody has to be bought in. So with that, you have to fit that in a timeline that builds. So little success, and then you've accomplished something great. And then it's a part of your organization. That was for us was the biggest thing, is kind of getting that established, getting everyone on board, and actually building teams to execute on those.
I think having well-defined goals cuts down on a lot of that, because like the goals are already like defined, and it's like keeping the team on track for the year. I've also been guilty of what I call like drive-bys, where I'm just walking by someone's office. Hey, I think we should open up an office here. Seems super easy. In my head, I'm like, oh, just like find the office, lease, furniture, or whatever. And it's actually a little bit more in depth than that, right? And so we have tools that we use at the firm where like one of the tools is like, and I tell everyone on the team, and I have an amazing team that I get to work with every day. And I tell them like, hey, just a heads up, I come up with a lot of ideas. Unless I fill out this form, I'm not serious about it. Because the form is designed to like sell myself on the idea and make me think through the idea, right? So unless I fill out this form, it's not like, it's just literally like word soup coming out of my mouth, and you should totally ignore it. I'm not asking you to do anything. This does not go on a to-do list until I've filled out, you know, this form.
What are some of the questions on that form my wife wants to
like,
know,
what
so
would
she
this
can-
look like if it was a success? What are the what's the worst thing that could happen if we don't do this? And that's usually where it fails. Usually where it fails is like, what's the worst thing that could happen if we don't do this? The answer is like, actually, if we don't do this, like nothing was actually going to happen. And so that's usually where the idea fails. Or like, what is the payoff? If this was completed 100% successfully, what is the payoff of this idea? In my mind, you know, driving to work, morning coffee, I'm like, oh, great idea. Get to work, fill out the form, and I'm like, oh, the payoff is not really that big, you know?
Yeah.
So I use those things to kind of keep me from driving people mad. The last thing that I want to do is take the team away from, you know, the important work that they're doing, which they're excellent at. I think probably one of the things that I'm working on learning is, when do I really want to push? Like, if I have an idea that I'm super passionate about and I really feel it's really important, like how far to push,
Yeah.
you know?
I think that's the challenge of any leader, right? Whether you're a leader of a small team, you know, a leader within your group, no matter top to bottom within the organization, companies are built of leaders. You know, it's not just the people at the top, it's the people at the bottom. Everybody's accountable and everybody contributes. It's, you know, establishing that confidence enough in how you operate as a company and as a team to say, hey, this is something I'm passionate about. I really think this is what we need to be doing. And then having a mechanism to talk that through, right? You know, we talk about conflict earlier. Conflict isn't, you know, conflict resolution. Conflict is having the confidence enough and having the free space enough to be able to articulate, you know, to speak up a concern, right? hey, Zach, that's a terrible idea because of this, this, and this. And, I'm not thinking about that because that's not I don't live that every day. Uh, and so, to Zach's point, you're walking down the hall and you bring up something. Really, oftentimes when I'm bringing something up, it's not to like say, hey, we need to do that. It's to see what face they make, whenever I say that. It's like, how does this affect that person? And a lot of times you just
Yeah,
get
and a
those
lot of times
cues.
I just need to be able to like talk to someone about it. Like I've got this idea, I need someone to think through this with me. And I just need like a partner to think about this idea with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you this whole podcast is about teams, right? It's about building productive teams. What structure do you guys follow, or how do you instill that in your groups? How do your teams work? How do your team of teams work, right? I mean, that's what any business is. It's a combination of teams of people. Like, how does it work at the lowest, at the base level, of your firm?
That's a great question. How does our team of teams work? So broadly, we have teams and we have teams in every department. So administrative, marketing, people, which is kind of like HR and recruiting and things like that. And then on the legal side, they're generally organized by geography. So Appalachia, Oklahoma, Permian, Bakken, Louisiana, all the places where we're geographically located. And then amongst the practice areas too. And then those teams usually have a team leader. And then those team leaders roll up to directors, and we have directors of business units, and I think all of the uh, directors and partners are in some form of team coaching or leadership coaching. And a lot of those coaching programs have opportunities for that to roll down to their teams. And we were always kind of trying to develop the next level of leadership at the firm as we grow. And one of the things that I've been working on in the last year has been trying to, we also have our core values and our kind of BHAG and our core purpose here at the firm. But one of the things that I wanted to start doing was creating a culture of appreciation amongst the teams. And so our meetings, our team meetings are kind of bookended with two things. The beginning of the meeting, it's what's something positive that happened for you or your team in the last week. So let's just start right off the bat, get everyone's voice in the room who's in the meeting, and what's something positive that happened for you and your team. And then at the end of the meeting, what's one thing that you appreciate about someone at this table, so that no matter what happens, which is sometimes conflict in the middle of those two bookends, we're still appreciating each other.
Yeah.
Because that's where you want to work. You want to work with people that appreciate what you do, where you appreciate what people do, where that gets, acknowledged and things like that. And so I think for us, how our teams work is I'm hoping more with a culture of appreciation. And also it's pretty transparent as far as what everyone on the team's goals are for that quarter. And so it's, the system that we've created here is it's really, you can't really hide from things happening or not happening. Like it's pretty apparent. And for the right people, and by the right people, I mean like the people that we want on our teams, that's not really an issue. Like they thrive to reach that standard. And if you're not reaching that standard, then, you can be an A player in another organization that maybe has different standards. I'm not saying ours
Those are
are better
bad.
than anyone
Bad,
else's.
yeah.
They're just different,
Yeah. I think you hit on a lot of the same things, right? That we do. I think the biggest change that I've seen in our team in recent history, the last 5-6 years, is that, you always hear humble, hungry, smart. That's the ideal team player. They write books about it. But the smart part isn't just, book smarts or knowing to do your job. Like it's a prerequisite to know how to do land work, to be a part of our team. But the smart part is like, how smart are you with how you communicate with people? It's really communication and establishing that process where everyone participates in a little bit of vulnerability, right? Um, and that goes all the way from the top to the bottom. No one is allowed to not participate, right? Um, and it's not, we're not doing trust falls and crap like that, but it's like just basic conversation. We break our people into groups for leadership development as well. And we don't group them by office. We have very similar to you guys. We've got all people in Pittsburgh, people in Dallas, Denver, Oklahoma City, here, Midland, San Antonio. I mean, they're all over the country. We try to be very deliberate about having them work together. I mix up offices. That our leadership development is going to have people from Pittsburgh and people from Texas working together, and that gives them almost a little bit of a safe place, that they can talk through things, share experiences, right? Things or ways that we do things better in one office, they're going to permeate from that office to the Texas office or vice versa by virtue of just exposure to each other. And kind of being deliberate about talking about that. We do after action reviews. It's like the age old Navy SEAL, special forces thing. After action reviews aren't this sit down process. It's like, all right, let's huddle up. We just did this. What went right? What went wrong? How are we going to do it better? It's a 15-minute conversation. It's very matter of fact. There's no, you don't get scolded for saying something went wrong. You know what I mean? It's
You
it's
gotta
a
make it
fact.
okay for people to make mistakes.
Yeah. I don't care if you make mistakes. Just don't make the same one over and over. And that goes all over. I think what's unique, maybe for the landman side of the business, as a broker, is that we're dealing with independent landmen all over the country, right? I've got landmen that work on, they're working on one team of 10, 15 people for 2 months, and then they're off to the next thing. And I think the important thing is that those folks that stay and work with Dudley Land Company experience the same thing from their, the manager at Dudley Land that's working on their project, regardless of,
Yeah.
what state they're
They're
working
also
in.
kind of a client of yours. They're
Yeah.
kind of a customer. Like they're a kind of a constituency.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You
And they're
know?
treated with respect and
Yeah.
the same expectations. Right. And I think that's, when we're talking about teams, that's the biggest thing. It's like the expectation, right? If everybody understands that they're accountable for a high expectation of performance and accountability, and they're engaged and they're actively involved in the effort, then you're automatically elevated, because everybody's aligned in their thinking. And that's the biggest thing to try to really push down when you're building teams. I think one of the things I wanted to kind of touch on today is this concept of teams is it's very prevalent in our business, right? As landmen, I mentioned earlier, we're always moving from project to project. You guys are always starting a new project with a new client or a new team. You're working a new area. So many of our clients get moved from assets to asset, where they're working with a whole new group of people. Like, what are some of the things that you've seen and just in general, maybe even from a client standpoint, that make the best team players at one of your clients? Like, how do people, what's the ideal type of person, the ideal skill set, ideal mentality for someone to elevate and be just the ideal team player?
I think what I've seen amongst our clients who I've seen be the most successful in their careers as landmen, which I think also has carryovers for our the folks in our firm and maybe even independent landmen as well, is it actually, like, the bar is very low. It does not take a ton of effort. It just takes a few things repeated all the time, which, number one, is like just being kind. Like, being kind to each other, to coworkers, vendors, superiors, bosses, the folks in the office next to you, people on different teams within your organization. Like being kind and treating people with respect is number one. Number two is like having integrity. And by integrity, I mean like basic integrity, doing what you say you're going to do. If you say that you're going to send an email on Friday, you send the email on Friday. If you're saying I'll call you tomorrow, you call them tomorrow. Like, if you say a project is going to get done by a certain deadline, then it gets done by a certain deadline. Or if it's not, if I'm not going to call you on Friday, I'm going to tell you, hey, I'm going to call you on Monday. Something came up, right? Or if the project isn't going to get done by May 1st, you're not calling them May 29th or April 29th and saying it's not going to be done by May 1st. Like actually maybe a week or two earlier, it's like, hey, something came up, it's more complex or whatever. Here's the new deadline. Do you agree with this? Right. And the third one is just probably smile. Like it sounds ridiculous, but just being a person that people like to be around takes you a long way because really, like there's a, like you said, there's kind of poker stakes for being oil and gas lawyers, for being a great landman, whether you're on the corporate side or like building a private equity based back company. There's kind of poker stakes of intelligence and industry knowledge that you have to be at that level, right?
Yeah.
And so what is, assuming that everyone that you're competing with for that role is at that level, and I would argue that for us, we have a lot of competitors who have the table stakes, right? Everyone's there are a lot of competent oil and gas attorneys that are not at Oliva Gibbs. And so I just really try and, work with the team on, look, guys, like just have integrity, do what you say you're going to do, be kind to people, be referable, which means those three things that I mentioned, and be someone that people want to be around. Like, are you in a bad mood all the time? Are you negative all the time? Like, I want to be around people like that.
Yeah.
Right? Do you participate in things? Are you engaged with your community, with the industry, with the team? Like, are you an interesting person? Those are the things that I've seen people succeed at, or who people who want to succeed. Those are some of the characteristics that I see in them. How about you?
I think when I look at, looking back up to our clients, the clients that have been the most successful, I mean, groups that come together, put together a good asset, the team works in unity. They all share a lot of the common traits. I say it like you said, step one, don't be an a-hole. And you see cultures permeate. It's very weird. Well, it's not weird, but it's just interesting to see how the cultures start to align. Like you see certain groups, types of people, a certain person at the top is going to hire a certain type of people. And it's whatever their mentality of how they should be, right? And so you start to see a lot of the same people, good or bad.
I met with, earlier in my career, met with like land managers at companies, and I'm like, man, I really don't know if I want to work with this guy. And then I go and meet the team, and they're very similar.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know, man. Like this, I don't know if this is going to be a great experience for us.
Just going to be tough. I mean,
and there's other folks that I've worked with where like, if we have a client go to another company and they bring that culture with them, and seeing them influence that team is amazing. And also like, I've got favorites that we love working with, and I know that everyone who is on their team is going to be like 10 out of 10, A player, super personable, like straight shooter.
Yeah.
We can have straight business conversations, not like these weird flowy, like, well, maybe there's going to be work, or maybe we might work for you. Work, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like boom, boom, boom. And we can have honest conversations, or direct conversations, I suppose. I love working with companies with great cultures. It's such a game changer. And I hope that some of that bleeds into us a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I think the ones that, at least the relationship between, Dudley Land Company and our client is the best, is when it's really looked as a partnership. Like when they call us to go to work for them, they're looking at it as we're a partner. And, my success as a company, as a EMP company is tied to how good you guys are and can operate. And
Yeah, for sure.
eh,
Those are the best. I mean, I love, like, I'll get texts and emails from clients like, hey, we would not have been successful without, your team in Louisiana doing an amazing job, or your team in Ohio or Bakken or Permian or whatever doing an amazing job. And we've also worked with clients where we try to build relationships with folks, and, like, it doesn't happen frequently and it has happened in the past. Like, the client contact there won't even pick up the phone.
yeah,
And we're like, well, we can't.
how can I make
How do we
decisions?
work with you?
How do I execute? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very much, I tell this to a
I
lot
think
of,
that's probably in every industry though.
I think it is. And I think it's just,
Yeah. It's
again,
just people being people.
yeah, being a good person and respect,
Right.
I guess, for the person. The worst thing you do is look down upon someone you're asking to work for you. And unfortunately that happens, I think that's a culture that you see in companies at times, where they're like, hey, this is the help. The help is there to do what you tell them to do. And yes, we will, we'll do what we're told to do. But man, it's like, honey, it's the whole saying about, I like it.
And it's gonna be really hard to, I mean, if I'm in your shoes, Brent, and there's a client that you guys are working with like that, who has that attitude, it would be really hard to get your team to really rally around that client's projects.
Yeah. And
Like,
it's,
how do you inspire them that
yeah.
way?
And you don't, you just beat them down and you don't get the best out of the person or the team in general.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, you're only as good as the people you work with. It's a very basic saying, but it's the truth. And so those groups that recognize that can have open communication and be open to that and respect your opinion. It's like, hey, Brent, I need you guys to get to do this, 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 and this. And the follow-up question, the best question is there any roadblocks to doing that? What do you need to get that done? And that's always the best, because we can feed them reality. We can inform them. If they're informed and we're informed, then we can all make the best decisions.
This conversation, Brent, and I'm trying to think back to all the work that we've done over the years, and I don't think that there may be, and I can't think of it right now. I don't know if there's a land team at an EMP that we've worked for that had that attitude that got outstanding results at all in that business unit.
Yeah, you're probably right. I can say for sure that, there's projects that my company has done that I can look back at that project and said, man, we crushed it. And the results of a well are irrelevant. Did the land do what it had to do? And I can say, absolutely, we crushed it. But the things that are always consistent there is that there was good communication, between the client and our team. There was respect, there was trust there. They hire us. I tell my guys all the time, they're not hiring you to be a yes man. They're hiring you to execute and advise. And those clients that listened to what we had to say and shifted expectations and things like that, or, we always strive to overachieve. Anybody does that if they're in a service organization. But there are other jobs that, we look back and say, God, that was a struggle. We couldn't get a response to an email. We were trying to make decisions and just doing what we thought was right. And then at every corner, they were looking back and, snapping down on us because we were, we should have been doing this. They wanted us to do that, but at the same time, they didn't communicate. So, I think that biggest thing to get the most out of your team is simply communication, from a client to a broker or a client to an attorney standpoint. I think that's
He's so
everything.
energizing for the team to work with a great land team at an oil and gas company and watch them achieve like great things and feel like you're a part of that. I mean, it really is energizing, and it really makes everyone at our firm, at least, really want to go the extra mile, help them with other things. Um, so it's super energizing. And I think that's probably the thing that I miss the most about doing client work is having that kind of substantive relationship with the clients and really understanding their wins. And our partners, and their teams do an amazing job of that. And it's also something that I miss.
Yeah. Well, Zach, you've done a great job building the team, and look forward to another decade or so. I still got some tread on my tires. I hope you do too.
They're gonna have to carry me out of this place. I'm really happy. I love working with our team, and I've got no intention of going anywhere. And as long as they'll have me, I'll be here.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll
That's
just
great.
sneak off every once in a while and go fishing with you.
Yeah, that'll work.
Yeah. This has been super helpful. I want to wrap on one last question. Obviously, you don't just come up with all these ideas by yourself. You don't develop into a leader without some assistance from outside sources. I know both of you have coaches. I'd love to hear more about that, and I'd love to hear about books that you recommend for people about leadership.
Well, I definitely work with coaches in different aspects of my life. Um, my wife is an excellent coach, actually, and so she kind of got me interested in that. And I work with a leadership coach because I want to be a better leader. I mean, that's the same reason why I work with you know, piano teacher or whatever. Like, I want to get better at things. And so I want to be intentional about being a better leader. And so that's been a really great experience for me and has really helped me find some areas where I can put some real constructive work, into. Um, and I've learned that leadership is just a practice, just like anything else. Like, always learning, always making mistakes, always reflecting on that stuff, always looking for new areas of improvement. I'll probably never have it figured out, and that's totally cool because now it's just a practice. And books for leaders, I think Brene Brown's got some really good books for leaders. Like, I really enjoyed those books a lot. And yeah, I'll leave it at the Brene Brown books. I think that she's a Houstonian, which is pretty cool. And I think she's got some really great leadership books.
How about you, Brent?
I think Zach kind of touched on something. Leadership is a discipline, right? It's a series of actions that you have to be consistent with delivering, and you're not supposed to know all those things, right? I think the biggest thing with leadership is being open to observing what others do, and there's not anyone who just wakes up a leader. Maybe you have the leadership traits, but how you execute on that is where the sauce is. And for us, we have a coach as well, and she was great about just providing us with a process of going through and evaluating and like making decisions and putting those ideas into action and learning that discipline, right? Like I said, I was a great landman and I was a good project manager and all those things, and I learned on the fly. Leadership and building and growing teams and instilling culture into whatever group you're doing is a discipline that you learn, and so you have to think of it that way. Finding mentors, being vulnerable, talking to people, trying to glean from or learn from other people's mistakes is a big deal. But outside of business coaches and things like that, for me, it was just that balance. I can't be a genuine person if I'm imbalanced. Am I spending enough time with my family? Am I feeling guilty for being at work when I should be with my family? Am I feeling guilty when I'm with my family because I should be at work? Like, you have to kind of get right personally, I guess. You gave me a book, Khalil, and I want to do a whole nother podcast talking to you because I really respect you as a business leader and as a person in general. We'll have to do another hour, but you gave me a book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, and it was really great. I actually read it on vacation, which is one of the only times that I do sit down and read. But man, it was like a revelation. I was like, what am I doing here? I'm stressed when I'm on vacation. I'm stressed when I'm at work. And that book was good for me to say, it's okay to stop and relax, slow down, be deliberate about when you do that. It's okay to be a hard worker and a great worker and all that, but you have to take some time to stop and slow down. And that's something I personally struggle with a lot just by my ADD nature. But that's a book that I would recommend for anybody. It doesn't matter if you're a leader or anything. If you're, a mom or a dad in a stressful work situation with raising kids, like you have to take care of yourself and make sure that you're good there spiritually, and just, taking time to soak it all in and being okay with stepping away. And then like a leadership, like big thinking book that was really kind of cool to me for whatever reason it stuck was 10X is easier than 2X. And that book was really about, hey, think big. You'd be surprised, like it's easier to go 10X than it is to just think of like incremental ways to get better. Like go big, think big. And then, before you know it, even if you only achieve half of what you were trying to achieve, you still doubled, So that was a really cool book. For whatever reason, it stuck with me. So I'd recommend those two for anybody if they're looking to grow a team or, build something. Those are the two. Stay balanced at home and think big.
That's good.
Zach,
No,
how
I
can
think,
people find you, man? Like,
Yeah.
you're all over the place. I heard your voice on a radio ad in Midland last time I was there. But how can people find you and get in touch with the firm? Or
I think if they just go to oglawyers.com or dirtlawyers.com, they can find us there. And also, I think, I try and be pretty active on LinkedIn. And so just looking for me on LinkedIn, Zack Oliva. I'm there. And yeah, that's where I'm at. I guess
Awesome.
everyone lives on the internet these days.
all right, Zack Oliva, everybody. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate you.
All right. Thanks, Brent.
Thanks
Thanks, Khalil. We'll see you guys.
Enjoyed today's topic? Follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Learn more at dudley-land.com. See you next episode.